We've come to the current conclusion that might change, that live a life worth writing a movie about, right? That's kind of like the Rodriguez project is like,
that.
yeah. So I love sharing the ups and downs so people can understand, like, you had to have those downs to be able to have the huge ups and stuff like
For
that.
sure. Love that.
So that's kind of like the just overall message within the show. But based on that, is there anything that you don't want to discuss?
I don't want to talk about boys.
I want to talk about boys.
Nope. Or relationship stuff.
Okay, cool.
Not that we would have talked about that.
Maybe. No relationship stuff?
Nothing.
All right, let's get this thing going. Welcome everybody to the Rodriguez Project here at Mastermynd Media. I have a very special guest today. She is a former professional footballer and now transitioned into a media personality. J Munoz.
Thanks
everybody.
for having me.
Absolutely.
I'm really excited.
Good.
Started.
This is something that is very interesting to me. So growing up, soccer in America isn't really pushed on, young athletes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe more women than men, would you say, or girls than boys growing up?
Yeah, definitely. I think here in the U.S., any sport is kind of pushed more towards, men or boys and not so much the girls. I remember, like for me when I was little, I had to play with the boys to kind of excel my career and my technique and my physicality. So just because there was no leagues for girls when I was here, when I was like when I was a little younger, there was only boy leagues. So then I had to step in with the boys.
Yeah. And how old were you when you started playing soccer?
I was about 4 when I started touching the ball and stuff. But I wasn't all into soccer when I was little. It was mostly like ballet, volleyball.
Interesting.
So very different. But I ended up sticking with soccer because I was good at it.
Yeah. Was it like, were you like much better than playing volleyball or?
For sure, definitely. I think the height didn't help with volleyball, but with ballet, I was pretty good. I loved it, but I think just time consuming wise, and my mom taking me to practices or ballet classes, it was just too much. So I had to kind of pick one. Yeah.
So growing up I grew up in Detroit, and we were always pushed towards like baseball, basketball, and football. Mm-hmm. And I never really grew an appreciation for soccer until like way later in my life. I had like 2 of my best friends are from Ethiopia, and that's all they cared about was soccer. So I would at first I'd be like, I don't watch that, and then I started watching a little bit more. Then the World Cup would come on. I'm like, oh wow, this is actually, and the fact that it's much bigger in the whole world. Why do you think that is? Do you have any like inkling of why soccer isn't so prominent in the U.S.?
That's a great question. I feel like you're right. I feel like all over the world, soccer is the number 1 sport played. It's like the world's number 1 sport. Mm-hmm. But I feel like here in America, it's obviously like NFL, NBA, stuff like that. And I don't really know why. Just because I also know that there's a big Latin community here with soccer.
Yeah.
So I don't know why it's not like, as big as the NFL or NBA. But it's crazy to see how in different parts of the world everyone plays soccer. Every single country has played soccer. Yeah, and
it feels like now, I think with social media, especially after this last World Cup, that was just like
insane.
Like, would you say it was the best one?
Oh, best games I've ever watched in my life.
Yeah,
and I'm sure my dad could say that. My grandma could say that.
Yeah, and that crazy. and now seeing that, and then isn't there some talk like even Messi coming over to play in
Miami? Yeah, I hope so. I would maybe move to Miami.
Yeah,
that's the case.
Because then I think that might change. I think so. That's what I was saying. Like social media with all of these like great highlights, right, and stuff like that, it starts coming on other people's radars, and then you have like, I think very similar to like when Beckham came to the MLS. It's absolutely. Like, people started paying attention a little bit more. Like, wait, I know him because of who he is, but not necessarily just watching him play a sport. But then I think there was a little bit more attraction. So I think even like that move with Messi coming here potentially, that do you think that would change the game?
Oh, 100%. I think when Beckham came and when Zlatan came to Galaxy, it was, there had more fans, more people were into MLS. I was even more into MLS. I usually watch just like European leagues or the Mexico League, but I mean, if Messi comes, I will never not watch an Inter Miami game.
Yeah.
So that's a really good point.
I mean, I'm already watching much more, and I've like, one of our clients, I think we spoke about him before off camera, Bajia Football Academy. We started working with them, and then now he sends me like, that's the reason why I watched the last game. Cause I'm still like, watching a soccer game. I'm like, okay. Because I haven't played, if I grew up playing it, then I would probably see the little things that you can see. Like if I watch baseball, people think baseball is boring, but based on like every pitch, I'm like, okay, what is it? What is it? Like, what's their strategy and stuff like that. But now he hit me up. He's like, you watching the game tomorrow? I'm like, oh, it's tomorrow. And then I woke up early to make sure I watched it. Yeah. And now I watched something that I can say I watched the rest of my life, so it's really interesting to see what's going to happen. But when you talk about like the greatest of all time, where do you go?
Oh my gosh.
Where do you land?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say probably Ronaldinho. I think when I was little, I would always look up to him. Just he's so technical, and I mean, he's Brazilian, so he has that culture in him too. So I think Ronaldinho or Pele.
Yeah.
Or Messi. I don't know. I can't choose.
Well, even now, like based on, I mean, that's what made the argument even more impossible, really, right? Like Messi winning this time after everything he's been through. Now it's like, okay, won this. Now,
like now what?
Yeah.
That was such a good storyline too. Messi just winning everything.
It was. And like, I didn't even know like all of the history of it, all the times that he had come so close and things changing and stuff like that. It's just like, what
and he's so humble.
Career. Yeah.
Like he won the World Cup and he was like so calm. I'd be crying.
Yeah. And I could just see like, if you don't know who he is, it just looks like a regular guy walking down the street.
Right.
And then you see him with a ball. And that's the thing is like, that's what those highlights and that's what social media will do is like, if you see somebody of that stature be able to do what he can with the ball, it's like, oh yeah, that's impressive. It's undeniable.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly. And I feel like even him off the field, he's such a family man, like such a great person, is into charities and giving back and stuff like that, which I think makes him even more of a superstar.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's that building that legacy, something that people can aspire to. So growing up, and you grew up in SoCal, correct?
I grew up in LA, and then I moved to Orange County in middle school because of soccer.
So based on your talent at a young age, like what was that first time where it was like, okay, yeah, she's really good?
I think probably when I was around 10, my dad was super hard on me. I would say like the way he brought me up is definitely not a way that I would raise my kid in soccer, but I'm thankful for him because I got to where I am because of him.
Yeah.
But
he was your coach?
He was not my coach, but he was basically a coach. Yeah. He was like a sideline coach. I remember when I was in AY, so I think that was when I was kind of like building my, technical abilities, my, moves on the ball, whatever. But I feel like he started to notice and then would take me out on the field, like just him and I every single day.
Wow.
And I would not want to go. Obviously, I'm like 8 years old. I want to hang out with my friends, play outside. I don't know.
Yeah.
But he would drag me out there and just like train me and like make me do sprints, like everything. It was insane. But because of that, I think it got me to where I am today. Yeah. And I think that's around the age where my dad was like, okay, like you're pretty good. Let's get it going. Wow.
So that was even before you could see, like you were playing and that he was just like, this is how you go all in on something.
Yeah.
That's a big thing that my father always stressed too, was like sports set you up for life, show you how to work hard for something, show you how to lose and then, overcome it and then to win in the future. So it was super difficult growing up with that, but then also, seeing how that could like, turn into a career. So when things started, so middle school, you're already working hard, playing on a team. And then what was in Orange County? Is that where like, there's a lot of like just better clubs there?
Yeah. I think the competition in Orange County is a little better than what it was here. So it was through a club team. So the club team that I was on helped me get to college. So my parents didn't go to college. I was the first in my family to go to college. So I think once they found out that soccer can help me get to college is when they put in the effort to move to Orange County. And my parents were super young parents. Like they didn't grow up with a lot and stuff. So when I was little, I didn't have as many things as like the other girls on my team or whatever. But obviously like as time went on, my parents really got on their feet and moved to Orange County, thankfully. So I was a lot closer to my club team, better education, better environment, I would say. So yeah, in middle school is when everything kind of switched and I dedicated like myself to soccer just because I know that my parents made the big move to like Orange County, and my dad works for, he's like the chief of LA fire department.
Oh, okay.
So he was making the drive, sacrificing like his time for me. And once I realized like my parents were making sacrifices for me, I was like, okay, I need to dedicate myself and focus on soccer.
Wow. That's especially at that young age to even have like the wherewithal to understand that they did that, and then to help you take it that much more seriously. So then middle school and then high school comes, and then what does that look like as far as like the team that you're playing on and stuff like that? Is, were you one amongst many really good soccer players, or was it, were you able to see that you were further along than they were?
Yeah, I think my club team, all the girls went Division 1.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that was like the team that I grew up with, and it's cool because in sports you gain best friends, and I think that's one of the main things that soccer gave me is friendships. But with that being said, like it was a very top club team. The high school team was a good team. So I think I was just surrounded with that like competitiveness.
Yeah.
So which helped me kind of just in every aspect of my life.
Wow. I grew up like I was in high school. I was like, I didn't hit my growth spurt till like 19.
Okay.
So like I was literally like, I played football, the American football, I guess you would say. And the first year in high school, and then I was just like a boy amongst men. I'm like, all right, I'm not doing this anymore. Like this is, I'm just getting killed. Yeah. They're like, everybody was already like balding and shit. And I was over here like, I'm like over here just like, it wasn't good. But eventually I just played baseball till my senior year. And now even looking back, I hitting my growth spurt at 19, then I'd play football, like backyard football with everybody, and then be just as good, if not better than all the guys that are on the team. And they're like, why did you play football when you were, I was like, I did. But I just couldn't compete with you guys. But then based on that, based on what the formula of being an athlete and everything, and then not being able to play amongst them, I found a love for acting and moved to LA. So like that was, I was glad that it kind of worked out that way.
And that's such a big difference too, like sports and acting.
Yeah, especially like doing like theater in high school. Like I only did one play, but then here comes all like my jock buddies, like and I thought I'd be judged by everybody. Yeah. And then I wasn't. They were supportive. They were supportive. Nice, I think everybody will be supportive if you're doing what you love. But but we always think that maybe, especially at a young age when you're like, I don't want them to judge me and think this or that. But I'm glad that I was able to push through that and then see that I had nothing to worry about anyways.
Yeah. And look at you now.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Look at me.
Thriving.
But yeah, so yeah, going back to your story now. So, as I said, this is like the Rodriguez Project being, having a journey, having a life worth writing a movie about. Like your journey is just so interesting, and watching it from afar. And I feel like I do know a lot of that. But now in high school, getting ready for college, take me back to that. Like what was that? Is your dad still like pushing you on the off days and stuff, or have you already like understood what you need to do and then you're pushing yourself that hard? What was that looking like for you?
I think once I got to high school, my dad definitely, backed off a little bit. I also had a lot going on. I was in track. I did club soccer. I did high school soccer. So I was just doing a lot, and I feel like I was a pretty good kid. I was focused in school. Never gave my parents any problems really. So I think them knowing that, my dad was like, okay, like, you know what you have to do. And once I committed, he was like, do whatever you want. Oh yeah. So yeah, I committed my junior year of high school. So pretty early, I would say, but I knew where I wanted to go. I felt really at home, and I feel like it was out of state, but I felt like I needed to separate the nest.
Yeah.
My parents are very overwhelming sometimes. Yeah, I love them, but I loved getting to go out of state for college.
Absolutely. Was there, even up to that point, was there any time that you almost were like, nah, I don't want to do this anymore? Or honestly, was it life? Was ball was life?
Ball was life at some points. So I remember in high school, I had more freedom to hang out with my friends, and just, I don't know. I felt really balanced in my life, and it's a point that I take with me. Like even now, if I like have balance in every aspect of my life, then I'm happy. Yeah. But if I don't, then something's off. That makes sense.
Yeah. And then even like being a kid in high school, people start drinking and stuff like that. Was it hard? Was there distractions, or were you so dedicated that it was like, you were able to see through all that? I'm
going to be honest. I feel like I've never been like super tough with myself in regards to having fun and just like enjoying myself. Even when I played pro, I think I kind of wish I focused a little more on like my eating or like not going out or drinking, but I like to have fun too.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I can see when that affects my play on the field, and just like not even on the field, but even like mentally too. I think alcohol and just not focusing on your craft really takes a toll on your mental health sometimes. But yeah, I think in high school I was kind of like doing whatever. And I wasn't like the terrible kid, but like I was having fun. It was my senior year, and then I was committed to college. And
even looking back, it's now that's been, a couple decades since from high school, but seeing the guys that we knew were going to go, the furthest, it's like, and seeing what they were doing, if they were obsessed. And like, even for baseball, we had no self-control. It was like, the day before like whatever the playoffs, I forget what that first round was or whatever, but it was scheduled the day after prom.
Oh, okay.
So we had no self-control. We still went to prom. We still went out that night, and then you show up, you have like a doubleheader the next day, and you lose the first round, and you're just like, oh, that was it. Even though we thought we were so good that we would still, now we got this, and you can do whatever we need to. But then looking back and then regretting that, being like, man, why didn't we ever take that seriously?
Exactly.
We could have actually done something, gone pretty far. And especially like for me, I never thought I was going to go pro or anything, but for the guys that were like wanting to go to college and wanting to go professional, to not take that seriously is like, I don't know if it's something in the Midwest or maybe just where I grew up, or if that's something that a lot of people go through, but it shouldn't be scheduled for prom anyway.
Yeah, that was on the school's part.
Yeah, I should have had somebody on the baseball team on the prom committee.
Yeah. But I feel like looking back on a lot of things, college soccer was it was fun for me. It was really, not easy, but I did my work, I practiced. But I think once I got to the pro level, things just changed. I couldn't just go to practice and do good. I had to really focus.
It was your whole life at that point, yeah?
Yeah, it was what my life was about. Like, I feel like I've played soccer my whole life, but I never really have said like soccer is life until I got to pro, because that's all I was doing.
Yeah, because you were in New Mexico, right?
I was in New Mexico for college.
And that was 1 year, it was 2 years?
4 years.
We went 4 years.
At New Mexico for college, and then 2.5 years in Mexico City with my pro team.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a lot.
Yeah, I bet. And then even by then, so now you're, so when you went pro, how old were you?
It was right after college. So I was 22.
22.
Yeah. 22. Yeah, I think so.
Wow.
So pretty young, but I had to move out there by myself. And then the language barrier obviously was a little difficult for me. I understand Spanish, but speaking it's hard, and I get nervous. So when I got there, I remember my first practice, I had a headache or migraine like after the first practice, because I was focusing so hard on what the coach was saying, and like had anxiety on playing well, and that lasted for like a month. Wow.
Because you go in, your first year being a professional, and then you just want to do your best. You want to, and at that point, are you thinking like, I'm going to be in this for life? Like, this is what was going through your head? Like when you started?
I think honestly, it's crazy to say this, but in college, I thought I was done playing soccer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was like, okay, well, that was fun. A good 4 years.
Because you didn't think that you were going to be able to go pro, or you were going to get picked up, or that you've been doing this every day, all day, every day for the last 18, 20 years.
I think it was that. I think I was like ready to be done. I was already preparing myself my senior year. I had a great senior year, and I don't know, I was kind of like doing like interning, and I was like getting myself ready for the real world.
Yeah. What was your degree in that you went to?
Business and communications.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was fun. I worked with like our soccer teams in New Mexico. I was getting ready for that next step. And then I got a call from my old national team coach saying, are you done playing? Like, we'd love for you to come out to Chicago to try out for the team. I'm like, what team? What are you talking about? He's like, Club America. I'm like, oh my God, this is my grandpa's like favorite club team. I didn't even know they had a girls team. So then I went to Chicago, obviously did well, made the team. I had like a week to decide if I wanted to move across the country. And I said, yes, why not?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it was the best decision I could have made for my life.
For sure. And then at that point, probably got you even more excited about like, oh, this is a great opportunity versus, and obviously, I think there's still like the amount of attention that's on like women's sports and men's sports, which is tough. Then that also results in like different salaries and stuff like that. So going in, so you didn't even have an agent at that time?
No.
So you had to get an agent because they, contacted you?
Yeah, I think I don't really remember, but agents aren't really that big in women's soccer. Or when I joined the team, they kind of just offered me what they offered me, and I didn't really know much about it.
Maybe bring a lawyer in or something? Or?
Yeah, after I got an agent, and then that's when things started to get easier for me regarding like brand stuff or just like working with people, asking for more. But with women's soccer, it's not as intense as the men's salary. Yeah. Obviously, we're working on that, and I think they're getting better in every aspect. But when I signed, I mean, it was nothing. Yeah, and that's why it's one of the reasons why I like quit soccer, because I'm like, okay, I want to focus on my future. I love soccer, but it's always going to be a part of my life.
For sure. Yeah. What a great experience. And even like, as we said, like how that just sets you up for your whole life. So even looking back at your career all the way up to being a professional, a young girl that wants to start out, and now knowing what you knew, or knowing now, what, you've been through, and having somebody that, like your dad that was pushing you hardcore to ensure that you were going to be the best you could be. Like, what's that balance that you maybe wish you had, or you're happy that it turned out the way it did based on what you went through as a kid and that kind of stuff?
I think just the fact that my dad instilled in me that you have to put in the extra work to be greater than the person next to you. Like, there's going to be tons of great athletes, but like, how do you separate yourself from like being elite to being a good athlete? Yeah. And I think that when I was little, I didn't understand that until I got to the pro level, and I was like, okay, so this is what my dad was talking about. Yeah. Like, these are elite players because they take care of themselves mentally, physically. They push themselves outside of practice. Like, I remember in Mexico, I like was doing pretty well, and that was when I was like focusing on myself the whole day. It wasn't like I slacked off mentally. Like, I was reading, I was doing yoga, I was meditating, like I was taking care of myself. And when I did that, I was elite. Wow. So I think that's what I would say is like a good balance to have.
Yeah, absolutely. We see that like now we see it in movies, or you've heard stories about like Venus and Serena, their father, and, Tiger Woods' dad, stuff like that. It's like, people that are like raised into the sport, and it becomes like the ultimate goal for them and for the family, which is so interesting. And even looking at your success, it's like, oh yeah, of course, based on having somebody like that in your corner. I remember I heard something recently, I forget who the American football player was, but he was a kicker and his dad was a coach. So not only was he brought up in a family where his dad was a coach, so he had that in his corner, but they also, because he was a coach, he had like 10 footballs. So when he would go out and practice in the backyard or on the field, he'd be able to kick 10 footballs and then go get them and bring them back, versus a kid that maybe has one that just kicks one, has to go back and get it. And then how much more he can practice at his craft by the end of the day, and do it every single day, so he understands, how much work it actually takes to get to where you want to go. And then how he became he became a professional player because of that. Wow. Yeah.
That's a great story.
Yeah. It just makes you think. It's like, because that's something that I learned later on in business. I had like a moment where I finally understood how much hard work it actually took. And I talk about that a lot, and I'm an extremist. So I kind of, I redlined a little bit too hard, too long, to the point where I was like, okay, now, I have to take care of myself and stuff like that. Yeah. But it was like not until 28, and men usually mature later on in life anyways, but it was like 28. Then I, discovered like Gary Vee's content, and then hearing like what he was talking about building a business and how much hard work it would take. And then I was able to like restructure my mind. And then that was all I did for like the next 5 years, and was able to actually build something. But that's the thing, I think, luckily, based on, having your dad in your corner and pushing you, even though maybe it wasn't, the most balanced, gentle, balanced childhood, but being able to see where you were able to go based on that. So now even like going pro and stuff like that, how was your, you said 2 years? 2.5 years?
It was 2.5 years. I think like 4 seasons in total. Wow. Yeah, it was great. It was the best time of my life. I grew so much as a person, and as a soccer player as well, but just as a person, I feel like I matured there, and it was hard, obviously, being away from family, but I knew I was there for a reason. I put in the work. I met my best friends. I mean, I think living in another country is a must for girls in their mid-20s, just to like get out there and just explore the world and culture, and just like get to know yourself a little better.
Absolutely. And so based on like, what was the lifestyle at that point? Was it like, you guys practicing every day? How many games a week and stuff like that?
It was 1 game a week, and then we'd practice in the morning. So I'd wake up at 7:30, have practice at 8:30. We'd eat at the club, play, gym, go home, and do nothing. So that was another thing that it kind of like made me get away from the game. But at the time, I loved it, going to practice, seeing my friends, working hard, coming back home, relaxing. You just didn't want to do anything the rest of the day. And
being paid for it.
Exactly. Best job in the world.
Goal. Yeah.
Yeah. So, that was pretty much the schedule. And then on our days off, we'd obviously go and explore the city and, be girls and take pictures, go to dinners and stuff. But other than that, it was just wake up, play soccer, come back home.
Even with like, you had an off season and everything too, or was it pretty year round based on that?
It was pretty year round. I'd have maybe 2-3 weeks off in the summer, and then our season would start back up again. Wow. So when I came back here, I really took these days. I worked out, but I would see friends, family, just because I'm pretty sure I missed every holiday for the past like 5 years, because I was in college and then I went to Mexico. So I've missed my mom's birthday, Valentine's Day, not Christmas, but just the other holidays. I don't think this was the first year that I've been here for all of them.
Wow, yeah, it's that's the toughest thing too. And like, I live 4.5 hour flight from my family and stuff, and try to get them out here as much as possible, and being able to travel with work sometimes and be able to be there. And now you got the niece and nephew. Now it's like, like it's, so I try to make it out as much as possible. But when you have to start picking and choosing, like, okay, I'll be there for Christmas and not Thanksgiving or whatever, it definitely, especially after a long time, it weighs on you.
Yeah, for sure. And I think over time it weighed on me, but it kind of got used to it. I was like, oh, another Thanksgiving and I'm alone with my teammates.
And you have siblings?
I do. I have a little brother. He's 23. He's in the fire department. So just like my dad.
Was he pushed into sports at a young age as well?
He was, but I don't think they were as hard as him, or as hard on him as they were on me. Yeah. I'm not sure if that's a younger sibling thing. But he was kind of mostly into football. He did soccer, but I think over in high school, he like got into football, and my parents didn't know much about football, but they were still supporting him. And like you said, it's always good to have a support system, like behind you, because a lot of kids don't, unfortunately. So I'm pretty blessed to say that my parents have been there for my brother and I. But that's another thing I hope to like do, I think, in the future with like a nonprofit or something, and just like help those kids that don't have that support system, like give them cleats or give them that information to like how to practice, how to get better, how to eat well, like just stuff like that.
Yeah. Because it's like, I think every kid needs to like try at least one sport. Yeah. And maybe play like one instrument, or at least try those
go
two
outside.
things. Yeah.
Not be on their iPad.
Yeah. That's what I'm seeing now in my nephew. He's 9, and he, so he loves basketball, and now he's, my brother-in-law goes to the gym in the morning at like 5:30, and he'll wake up and go with him now.
Oh, wow.
Because he's starting to see that he needs to practice to be able to contend with these other kids his age. And even now he's in basketball. So it's 9, 10, and 11-year-olds based on however many kids they have.
Okay.
So now he's the youngest out of all these other people. And
probably smaller.
Yeah. Too. Yeah. Well, he's...
or is he pretty tall?
Sure. I think he's now, I think maybe he's not much smaller than they are. So it's a little bit easier for him to transition into that. But now, there's like so many different tools you can have. There's like a basketball that like is connected to an app that you can like score points based on like,
what?
Like, you're like looking at your phone, and then you like watch the person that's doing it or whatever. And then as you're dribbling and whatever the case, like you hit different points. So they make it a game. So now his handles are much better because of apps and stuff like that.
That's crazy. Yeah. I've never heard of that before. I feel like there's some for soccer too.
There has to be.
Oh my goodness. That's crazy.
So there's little things like that now based on this new age that you can make a little bit, more fun to practice on your own and stuff like that. But he was, and he still plays a lot of video games and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And it's tough because, maybe not tough. You can have a great career playing video games these days.
Be a gamer.
But exactly. But still get out and go do something. And you can learn a lot from playing video games, I guess, too, if you learn how to lose and overcome it and stuff. But I just can't imagine, ever, having a childhood without sports. My childhood was all sports.
Really?
It was all sports all the time. I played hockey for a little bit.
Ooh, I love hockey. But I love watching hockey.
Yeah, it's great. I always watch it during the
Stanley Cup.
Yeah, during the playoffs, because like Detroit Red Wings were like the team for a long time.
Right.
They're like hockey town. So I watched it a lot then, but I was so small growing up that I played for like a few practices and I was like, nah, I'm out. I'm going back to baseball.
You just get tackled basically. And,
yeah.
It's a sport that I love to watch, but I get so scared watching sometimes. I'm like, are you okay? You're probably concussed.
Yeah.
It's
they
insane.
got knock their teeth out and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, as we're talking about living a life, making a movie about, what was the highlight of your career? Would you say based on, would it be when you're a professional, or when was the highlight of your whole soccer career?
Ooh, I would say when I made the full team for Mexico. So usually I was with the U20s. So I was 18, 19. And then I didn't really get called up for a while until my one day at practice, our coach kind of pulled us in. He was like, we have special news. And I obviously didn't think anything of it. I was kind of just listening. He was like, Jen got called up to the full team. And I was in shock. I was like, me? I'm pretty sure. I was like, what, me? Are you sure? Like, okay. So anyways, went to the full team.
Just because you were kind of modest and like, nah, I'm not that big a deal. But then
and I think I don't know why I just didn't think I was like ready. And I feel like I always feel that way. I always have like imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Where it's like, am I meant to be there? Like, are you sure? And I've kind of like worked on that over the years. But I went to camp, or we went to camp and then had a tournament in Europe. It was a friendly in Greece, I think. And I played my first game, and in the first minute I scored. And after that I was like, is this real life? Like, did this just happen to me? Like, I'm pretty sure I was like not confident enough to be there. And then I go in the second half, first minute, I score on, I think it was like Croatia or something.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was when I was like,
did that help you like
oh,
make
absolutely.
the switch?
I was not nervous. I was adrenaline the whole game. I ran for like ever. But yeah, I think that was the moment where I was like, okay, I deserve to be here. This was great. Take it in, but keep working hard. And that's another thing. I'm like, you can never be like too confident, because you can have the best game of your life and then the next game play terrible. So I'm always in that in between. I'm like, okay, never good enough, but then I'm like good enough. I don't know. Yeah,
and I think that might be a good place to be. That's really interesting what you say about imposter syndrome, because I've talked about this on a separate podcast and talked about this in life a lot, because we've seen this come up on social media, and I was always afraid that people might attach themselves to that, but really they're just not doing the work. They're not putting the 10,000 hours and stuff like that. But to hear your story and hear that even you as a professional and getting called up to the team, even at that point, is dealing with imposter syndrome. I mean, and probably at the time, I don't know if you were able to identify it as that, or if that was even a thing then.
I had no idea.
Yeah. You just
now, I'm like, that was that.
I think it's natural to have those feelings here and there. But I think the more you do something, the more you would lose that. But for you to be playing every single day, all day since you were 4 years old, and to still at 20, what would that be, at 21? Or no, 22, 23?
I was 22, yeah.
So then you get called up, and even at that point, you still might have it.
Yeah. It was
those thoughts.
It was insane, yeah. But I think after going on that trip, and it was unfortunate because that happened. That was the highlight of my career, and then COVID happened.
Wow.
So it was just the worst timing, but everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
Obviously had a little break, kept working hard, came back to the team, but there was no one in the stadiums during COVID. It was a different vibe and a different atmosphere, which I think over time made me kind of lose passion for the game a little bit, which is
some of that energy.
So unfortunate, but it just happens. I mean, I really blame COVID for my loss of love for the game in a way, but
which will all make sense in the future.
Exactly. But, now I'm looking back, I'm like, well, everything happens for a reason.
Wow, that's so interesting. And I'm just saying interesting a lot as like, just hearing your journey. And so coming back, and there's no energy in the stadium because it's COVID. Yeah. What was the age group in professional women's soccer? Is it like 23 to 35, like kind of like other men's sports too, or what is it?
I think on my team, it was the oldest. She was 30, I think. And then the youngest was 16. So, I mean, now I think the age range is more mid 20s to like low 30s.
Yeah.
But when I was there was a 16-year-old, but from Mexico. So in Mexico, a lot of the girls, like, she didn't go to school. She kind of just was in soccer her whole life and was now on the team. But it's a different culture over there. But yeah, those are like the age ranges.
So you have the highest moment of your career. You're like ready. So you almost lose maybe just like not love for the game, but just might go a different journey, get pulled into the pros, get moved to the main team, have the game that you didn't even know was possible.
Yeah.
And now you're stoked. Now you're just like dedicated, full throttle, thinking maybe this is like the next 10 years. Would you say at that time?
Absolutely. I was playing at my highest level that I've ever played at. After the game, and even coming back from COVID, we had about a 2-month break because the world didn't know what was going on.
Yeah. Was it like right after that game it happened, or was it that game?
Right after that game, we like came back to Mexico City. We were about to play a team.
Like March 2020 or something like that?
Yep, it was March. And my family came into town because they haven't seen me in a while. I was obviously in Europe. And then we had a game the next few days in the stadium. So like with my club team. It's because I went with the national team to Europe, and then this was with my club team. So my family came, and I was super excited because it was my first time my grandpa would ever see me play. And that's my grandpa's favorite team, and I was super excited.
Wow,
and
it all came together.
Yeah, but then the day before they canceled it because of COVID, we all went home. I came back to the U.S., and we were just 2 months, nothing. I kept training and stuff because I was like, I don't want to lose the level that I'm at.
Yeah.
I didn't lose it. Came back to Mexico, trained, and it just wasn't the same. Like nothing was the same.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like Drake's album?
Oh, no, my God, that's so embarrassing. I was like, that sounded familiar. Did I just have I said that before? Yeah.
We'll just continue making Drake references.
I love Drake.
But even losing love for the game, I always think about Kobe. So Kobe, when I don't know if you ever heard this story, he would meditate, and when in his mind would always go to basketball. And when he would meditate and then his mind stopped going to basketball, then he knew that it was time to make a transition or pivot out of basketball.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it's like, because you think if this is, and it's so hard, and so many people want to become professional athletes and maybe have this lifelong dream and then don't make it, and they got to figure things out, get into this real life and whatever they want to do or figure out at that point.
Yeah.
But it's that transition I think is hard. But what is even more difficult, I would say, is like being a professional and then making that transition out. Or even if you get to like, especially, you talk about like managing finances and stuff like that. We hear about that all the time where people get, pro contract and then maybe they're not doing that anymore if they can't transition into like a media personality or something like that. It's like, what are you going to do? And exactly. I think, so for you, so that all happens, and then COVID happens, and now you have all this time off. You come back, and it's not the same. How long did it take you to make that decision to transition out?
I would say after COVID, it was about 1.5 years till I kept playing. How
long was your contract for? Was it?
It was before I left. It was for another 2 years. So I think I signed 3 months before I told my manager I was done. I signed, I was I signing the contract. I don't know. I was in what's it called? Just going through the motions. Yeah. I was like, okay, another contract looks good. Signed it. I'm like, all right, here we go. And that's the point. Throughout my last few months, I was just going through the motions. I mean, I was still invested. I put in the hard work, but I just knew I'd come home and not be fulfilled. And I think that's when I started realizing if I'm not fulfilled anymore, I need to move on to something else, which is what I did. So it was hard. Yeah. Obviously, it's the hardest decision in my life. But everyone was super supportive. I think everyone kind of knew. They saw the loss of fire in my eyes.
And it was less what the world's going through. It's so understanding, because would it been harder to leave the game if COVID never happened? Do you think obviously you'd played longer and had a love for the game, because even thinking what is my dad gonna think and stuff like that? Yeah. Was that part of the formula to make the decision?
Oh, absolutely. Oh my God, 100%. I was so scared to tell everyone really. I think I told my teammates first.
So you even made the decision and didn't really speak to anybody. You just knew.
No, I just knew. Yeah. And I don't want anyone to change my mind or.
Do you think your dad would have changed your mind if you would have talked to him before? Do you think he would have tried to?
I think part of me thinks he would have, but when I told him, he was like, okay, if that's what you want to do, then you know what you have to do and stuff. But I was mostly scared to tell my grandpa, just because he was so proud of me. His love for the team is insane. He's their number one fan.
Yeah.
And I remember we came out on this like Netflix show with him about Club America. And he was crying on it, saying how proud he was of me that I was like on the team and stuff. And like, I didn't know that until watching the show like a month ago. Like, I didn't know how proud of me he was for that.
Yeah.
But when I told him I was done, he was like, okay, like, I'm so proud of you. Like, you had a great few seasons. And yeah, so I think the hardest part was telling my grandpa. But I think everyone knew I was done. So.
Yeah. So now, what did that first week look like after you stop playing? Are you full with like opportunities and possibilities, or are you kind of like missing the game? Was there like, what does that first week to a month look like for you?
I think I was super numb to soccer at that point. So I was like not distracting myself, but I was so happy experiencing new things that I haven't gotten the chance to experience, like going on trips with my friends, or, you know, seeing people I haven't seen in years, like being back here and being normal and just like living my normal life, I would say, like not training, nothing. But then obviously over time I was like, oh my God, I miss soccer so much. And I think watching soccer and being around soccer kind of brings me back to those days where it's like, I want to be on that field, I want to play. But now I'm more like patient and just like understanding of where I am in my life. And I don't think there's any way I'd go back to playing. Yeah.
Unless you write that check. No.
Yeah, I'm like, give me a little more. Just kidding.
Yeah, but just being able to take what you learned from that and then apply it into this new world, new opportunities. Yeah. You did the reality show. Mm-hmm. You're now doing a media personality and then speaking on games and stuff like that. Like, what do you find your most love for now that you've transitioned out and seeing what else is out there?
I think just being in the game still. I feel like the club does a really good job of including me still, and just, I don't know, I feel like I left not only a mark on the field, but kind of off the field too, which is what I still want to do in soccer. I am still involved, very much involved here in LA with soccer. So I feel like, I don't know, I haven't found like my passion yet, I would say, but I do know that I'm happy in the soccer world, whether it's on the field or off the field. Yeah,
it's very difficult. And I think even like, being in your 20s and trying different things, that was my whole 20s. I tried so many different things. And eventually I was like, okay, I love all of this stuff. What do I love most? What do I want to put the most time into so I can actually, rather than having like a width of like, these staying busy, it's like, what can I find depth in?
Exactly. And that's crazy that you say that, because I was talking to my friend yesterday about it. I just was telling her that I feel so lost, and she's like, you're not lost. Like, look at you, look what you're doing. I'm like, yeah, but like, I need one thing to fully immerse myself into. Right now I'm in this and that, but I'm not.
And it's eventually, it's, you know what I mean? Like, and even it's interesting, even with my career, it was like, I was 20, moved to LA, and then like, it was like, I'm only acting, give me 3 years and I'll make it. And then 3 years passes, you're like, oh, wait a second, I haven't even started yet. Yeah, just kidding, give me a little more time. But then I started doing other things, music and hosting and all these, and I was like, wow, I really like doing all of these things. But what am I best at? And I was like, acting. Let me write a film for acting. And then I had this invention idea. Then I created an invention, and then I threw everything away at like 29 and went all in on an invention for a whole year that I thought was going to like change the game. And then because of some things within Snapchat, it was like an invention for Snapchat and smartphones and stuff. And because the functionality changed on Snapchat, I lost that. So then I was like, oh, fuck. But I learned so much within doing all of these creative things, learning all of this business knowledge, was like going to school for business at this point. Mm-hmm. Then I was able to take all of that and be like, okay, what do I have? And I would like to say, I wish I could say I knew what I was doing, but I didn't mean to start a digital agency. I wasn't like, wow, look at all these great, I've done all these creative facets and I know business now. Let's make a digital agency. It was like, all right, I'm going to go back to waiting tables. And then somebody asked me to run their Instagram to grow their following. And then I was like, I said no at first. And then I was like, okay, how much would you pay me? And they're like $200 a week. I was like, okay. Then I grew theirs by like 5,000 the first month. And then they were like, and they told somebody else about me. And then, so that saved me. That was what was supposed to happen. Like I was sleeping at their house for a couple months before their baby was born because I had nowhere else to go. Yeah. But luckily I had spent my whole 20s learning different things, and I learned business, and based on the opportunity, I was ready for it. And they got one client, and then 2 clients, then 5 clients, and then started growing a company. Wow. So that's what I think is the most important thing, is like, you're at a place now where you have all of this, you've built such a strong name and like learned all the lessons of having, sports in your life, and learning how to just go fully engulf yourself into something. But now you're trying all these different things, and then eventually it's just gonna hit you. And it's like, oh, so. This is it, yeah. Or it's not, or it's gonna just kind of introduce itself to you. And you're like, oh wow, that is kind of interesting, and then it'll kind of blossom from there. But I think a lot of people, they, because of social media and just other people knowing exactly what they want, my life changed out to be completely different than I thought it would at 20.
Did you feel like you're a little behind when you're in your 20s, like looking at everyone, what they were doing?
I did, and I was like cocky, hard-headed, and that's why, coming out here, I was like, give me 3 years, watch. Because I knew I was talented, but then you don't act for 3 years, and you're not even in class because you can't afford class, or you could if you stop going out all the time, is what my situation was. But once I was able to understand that, then I could actually, see what was around me and see what people are doing. And then you start seeing, like this person booked their first show, and like, wait a second, I want to do that. But if you don't know the formula, then you can't get to where you want to go.
Exactly.
If you're not actually applying yourself, you can't get there. But the biggest thing for me was patience. And once like at 28, once I finally realized how much hard work it took and how much patience you had to have, that actually allows you not to be focused on the destination and really, as cliche as it is, like fall in love with the journey, because you're like, wait, okay. So every day, even if it's a bad day, even if you lose that day and like now you have to figure things out, it's like you need that negative day to then help propel you to get to better things that come.
Wait, I love that. I feel like that's what I needed right now. Because you just feel stuck and you look around, and social media plays such a big role like in everyone's lives right now. But you look at the person like on your following, it's like, oh my God, she's doing this. Like, why am I not doing that? Should I be doing that? Like, they're married. I'm like, should I be married? Like, like you feel so behind, but everyone's on their own path, on their own time.
Yeah. So. Once you really understand that too, and once you figure out that like what the game is for you, a lot of times we work with people in like the relationship with social media, because if you're focused on, we call that defense. If you're focused on defense, then it's gonna have like a negative impact on you. But if you're focused on offense, like how can I continue putting good out there? How can I provide value? How can I start a nonprofit to help young women to have the tools that I had growing up, but in maybe a more balanced way?
Yeah.
A big thing for me right now is like, as an entrepreneur, redlining for 5 years and then having some health issues and being like, wait, why am I have heart palpitations? Like, I've always been able to eat whatever I want. It's like, yeah, you can't anymore, bro. Like, you can't keep on doing this. You can't have pizza every night and like McDonald's for lunch. It's not going to be good for you. So now I'm like at a point where I'm like, yes, I want to teach people, like youngsters that are getting into the game. It's like, hey, you have to work really hard to get to where you want to go. But if you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to be able to function when you finally get there. Mm-hmm. And it's still a balance for me, because I'm an extremist and I'll go really hard at whatever it is. But without that patience, you just like, you're also vulnerable to decisions. Mm-hmm. If you want something that other people want, just because of what it looks like at face value, you might make the wrong decision because you're trying to keep up with the Joneses versus being like, what do I want? What is my formula? What do I know will take me to the next level? Then you don't have to listen to anybody else. You can block out the noise, and you're just like, no, I know exactly what I'm doing, and it's difficult too, because people will tell you, no, you should do this. I turned the biggest deal of my life down last year. Got a deal with like a big studio. They wanted for like a writing contract. It just didn't feel right because I wasn't going to be able to direct the film.
And that's what you wanted to do.
And that's what I wanted. Yeah. I had just put in all this time and effort into it. And I was like, do I want to take a back seat? Am I going to be okay in a year to be able to watch somebody else make my film?
Oh, wow.
Am I going to be okay? And what if they fuck it up?
Yeah. Or it's something that you don't agree
wasn't supposed
with.
To be, yeah. And I think, in this business, you have to, that's where like the hard-headedness comes in, and it's helpful because I'm like, I know exactly what I want, and I know I'll get there if I keep on, going down the path. And then eventually maybe my mind will change and say, you know what, we've tried to make this film for 5 years, and this director wants to do it. Let's put him on, and then let's do this, or let's, this person wants to attach, let's put her on, and then see what happens with it. At least I've tried, but I don't want my mental health in the future to be like, to be regretful for that.
Yeah. And your value, your worth, and what you want to do too. Yeah. But I think that's a big thing I'm taking away from you right now, is kind of like focus, like block out the noise, focus on what you want internally. And even if I don't know what I want right now, I think my journey will lead me to that.
Yeah. Especially if you're doing things that you want to do and that you enjoy doing. And if you can make money doing those things, and just being open to like, all right, be intentional, but also open at the same time, because that's when those new loves will come in, and just don't rush the process.
Yeah.
It's hard not to. It's hard not to.
So hard. And I feel like it's like I'm always go, go, go. When I'm not, I freak out. I'm like, why don't I have anything to do today?
Yeah.
But sometimes it's okay to relax. You need that.
Yeah. Yeah. We were just talking, Jai, who's downstairs, we were just talking the other day, and she was like, you know, she's a stylist and wants to, like, she's fully into it and making this transition to do that full time, but was getting overwhelmed and stuff. And was having a tough day. And it was like, also, we're all different. So when you need to rest, you have to understand you need to rest. And if you don't, then it could potentially get worse down the line anyways. And although you do need to put a lot of hard work in, that doesn't mean you can't rest. That doesn't mean you can't take a break. And also, if somebody next to you is going full throttle and they can go full throttle longer, it's like, that's okay. That's their journey.
Yeah. You don't have to feel guilty for just relaxing.
Never. Never.
I feel that.
The only time you have to feel guilty is if only time you should feel guilty is if maybe you're not doing what you think, you're not doing what you need to be doing.
Exactly.
But once you understand that and you understand what works for you, and that's what I think, even like for you going so hard for so long, it's like, you know what you're capable of. You know how much hard work you can put in a day.
Yeah.
You know, and that's really, I think that's probably the most important lesson I would say from my 20s was like, how much hard work can I put into something? And then what are the results of that? And to also understand, like, okay, how much is overdoing it?
Exactly. And I feel like other people too kind of I don't know, like with my life, it's always like, okay, well, what else are you doing next? What's next? And I feel like I've gotten that question since I've been done with soccer. Yeah. Even when I was in soccer, it's like, hey, what's next? And I ended soccer and someone's like, what's next? And then I went on the show. What's next? I'm like, I don't know what's next really. But I think having people ask me that constantly, even now, I'm like, I don't know. I'm going to do this. And then they're like, hey, what about after? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So I think other people also influence me sometimes and kind of freak me out.
Extra pressure. Yeah. Especially if you're like being interviewed and stuff like that, they want to know, like, you know, but I actually, even starting this podcast, Stuart K. Robinson was on, and he was like, what is the Rodriguez Project? And one thing I didn't know, like I have an idea of what it is, and that's why I've been explaining it to you earlier. Currently, it's this thing of having a life that's worth writing a movie about. So, which is like taking risks, having the ups and downs and all of that. And then me being able to share those, and also having people on that can be truthful and but also have somebody on that's like, you know, we're talking about, you know, life stories and laughing for 2 hours, because laughter is a part of life too, right? And there's a part of a movie, there's the comedic relief or whatever the case. So I have an understanding of what it is, but I'm also okay with it evolving into whatever it's supposed to be. And that was one thing that I was able to learn through that episode with him. You know, this being the Rodriguez Project, we're all works in progress. So I was able to understand, like, okay, wait a second, I don't know exactly what this is, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But I know that I have the formula. I know that I know what it takes to actually make something successful, which is hard work, consistency, patience, rest.
Yeah.
You know?
I feel like there's so many like factors that we maybe forget about or don't think about. And I know I forget sometimes. I forget patience. I forget even hard work. I get lazy sometimes. I'm human. But I think, like you said, everyone's a work in progress. So patience is a huge thing.
Yeah, and it's chapters in life, and be grateful for the different chapters too. Because like, if I could look back, what if I didn't create a digital agency and all of this stuff wouldn't have made as much sense? It eventually would have, anyways.
Exactly.
You know,
everything happens for a reason. I know it's so cheesy to say, but everything truly does happen for a reason. Like you're acting. You know, you tried for 3 years and, I mean, it didn't work out the way you wanted to, but look at you now. Like,
but even now, and what, you know, I just went to Sundance and I was like, I feel like I'm being pulled back into acting. Like I want, like my whole, you know, what I've figured out when I figured out myself is like, I love having a digital agency that is, you know, we just strive to stay on the forefront of attention to understand where the world is going, because understanding social media and branding and how to use the internet properly is a very necessary part of any business or life. So if we can help people get to where they want to go, as well as our company. But I thought for a while, like the first 5 years of the company, I'm like, no, I want to be the CEO forever. I want to just continue building this. And then I realized, okay, I don't ever want to do anything alone ever again, because it's just too much. Yeah. Great lessons. But I also was like, okay, I want to have a business, thriving businesses, and also be known as the best writer, director, sometimes actor. And that's like my main thing. And that might change too.
Yeah.
But for me now, even going to Sundance, people were asking about acting and stuff, and they thought they had seen me in something or whatever. And I haven't acted in like 7 years, had some successes and stuff. And I know that I'm great at acting, but I also know my life the last 6 or 7 years hasn't been able to have that be a part of the whole thing. But I'm patient enough to then write projects, direct projects, produce projects. So now as I get back into acting, I'm not just one of 3,000 in an audition room. I like know the producers. I know whoever's making the piece. I can talk to them,
smart.
and versus just acting and auditioning and crossing my fingers for the last 7 years. I was like, nah, that's not a great business strategy. Let's go this way. And now having the patience, I'm like, okay, now I'm ready.
Yeah. And you're so versatile too. I feel like that's a huge thing. I feel like for example, like I'm not just an athlete. I'm more than an athlete. I have more skills, and just like you, like, so you don't just write, you don't just direct, you also act. And I think some people kind of like close themselves off, and it's like, I'm just going to do this. And it's like, no, you can do a lot of things, but like use your skills to better yourself.
Yeah. And be okay with not being the best at it.
Exactly.
At the very, the very beginning.
Oh my God, yeah.
Like if you have other loves right now, which I'm sure you do as well. It's like, if there's other things that you want to try or whatever. And that's the beauty of like your whole, like your journey up to this point, like starting something new, who to go to get best at it. In like the quickest amount of time. Not that you need to go quick, but it's like deciding who you take advice from, deciding who's going to coach you on this or who to speak to, start this new part of your career, and just being open and just honest with yourself and doing it for you.
Exactly.
That's the biggest thing.
Yeah. And I feel like over time, it's kind of like like I said, I feel lost sometimes, but sometimes I'm like, oh, I got it. I have my life together. And it's like, no, I don't. I'm 26 years old. Like some people do like have it all together, but most of the time people don't. And I think it's nice to be reminded that kind of like not everyone has it together. Even if they look like it, they don't.
Yeah. That's why literally I'm like, even the ups and downs, because even if you get to the next level, okay, now you're at the next level. Now your expenses are higher. The risks are higher. The more employees you have who are depending on you and stuff like that. So it's like, I always try to be very truthful with that, because definitely from the outside looking in, it's like, oh yeah, he figured it out. Like, no.
Yeah, it's a day-to-day job, just figuring yourself out in the world too, and just life in general. Yeah,
and being able to, like, when you wake up in the morning being like, okay, whatever you're doing, is it important enough to make you get up on the days that you don't want to get up?
Exactly.
Because I have those too. I'm like, or have like a tough call I got to go through, or like an upset client that we got to go to, or whatever the case is. It's like, I still got to get up. Yep. That's even like Charles, who's here. What's up, Charles?
What's good?
But like that was, Charles, for the most part, usually gets here at 8 a.m. And so I've literally strategically did that. We pushed to 9 just because it's been a slower month, but like 8 a.m. it's like, if Charles is getting here, I got to be up too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think it would probably help. Would you say like getting up and going based on the hard days and stuff like that, knowing that we're holding each other accountable, is that?
Oh, it's made the difference of my career and life in Los Angeles.
Wow.
I don't know what I would do without that structure, and knowing like, it might be tough, but at least I'm going to Marks today. I know what I'm going to be doing, and we'll get through it.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that's a good point, to have people in your circle. I've recently learned that just like the people that you surround yourself with are going to affect your life. Like now everyone in like all my girlfriends here are working hard, successful. If they're not where they are yet, like they focus on that, and they don't prioritize like things that aren't going to help them in the future, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I think this is like the biggest takeaway for me was ask or listen to, and there's so much stuff you can go online and find so much stuff, or whether you went to college or whatever the case. Even though I'm not a big college guy.
Yeah, I don't think I learned anything in college, to be honest.
YouTube was very helpful, and just doing. But once you take the time to figure out yourself, and take the time to figure out the business plan. Doesn't have to be a business plan for a specific business, but whatever you're doing, once you figure that part out, it'll click for you. And then it doesn't mean you won't have hard days, but you'll know exactly what you need to do every day, and nobody else can change your mind. Because even when you start cutting people out, it's tough, because you don't want them to be like judging you, or like think you're a bad person, or think that you don't like them or whatever. And it gets difficult. Those people start falling off. They start saying like, it's not the same anymore. I always talk about the fact that I didn't go to birthday parties the first few years of my, once I figured out that. And people would say like, hey, you want to come to have my birthday party? I'm like, oh, I don't go to that. Like, if you want to go to lunch next week, I'm down. Like, what do you mean you don't go out? I'm like, yeah, I don't go out anymore. I had all of the fun.
Yeah. Like,
I've already had it, but I knew that if I went out, I would be drunk for, the whole night. I'd be hungover for a couple of days. And those were 3 days I could have put into my business. And if you can look at life that way, you'll have the patience because you're putting everything that it takes to get to where you want to go. And then you'll stop listening to outside noise and be impacted by that. You'll have to make tough decisions. I made some really tough decisions about stuff that family stuff that I didn't go to because I'm like, nope, gotta work, and having, some sort of balance, whatever balance works for you. But once that clicks for you, I think that's like the key.
Yeah. And I think I've really emphasized my life on balance now. I try to make sure like, is this person draining my energy, or is this job, am I not happy? Am I just being here just because I couldn't say no?
Yeah.
So I think really picking and choosing who I hang out with, what I do, what I accept, like brand wise, like I'm not going to go with a brand who doesn't fit my values.
Yeah.
Like I don't appreciate that. And it's just like picking and choosing, really, like you said.
Yeah. And it's saying no to something. It just, not only do they understand and do your reps and everybody around you understand what you don't want to do, but it also, alerts the universe that, hey, we don't need this stuff anymore.
Exactly.
And then new opportunities open up from that. Like Matthew McConaughey was the, shirtless guy in all of his movies until a certain point where somebody offered him like 3 million, then 5 million, then 12 million. And he eventually he said no to, I think it was $12 million to do a film that was going to be another rom-com. And he almost did it because they got to that certain, $1 million price point where he was like, let me read this script again. And then he turned it down. And then he got Dallas Buyers Club. Then he did True Detectives and every film. Now we know him as this like great actor that's super deep, that isn't just the guy with his shirt off in every movie.
Yeah, the attractive one. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but you have to make tough decisions to like draw your line in the sand. Like, no, this isn't me. And the right thing is going to come.
Yeah. And I think that's such a good point because like now in my career, it's like, okay, it's sad to say, but my social media, like that's how people view me. And I feel like it sucks because Instagram's 3% of my life. Like they don't know my personality. They think I'm like super into myself. I'm like, I'm not. I'm the complete opposite. Like this is just funny. But I feel like with my job now, like being a broadcaster, I've been told like, okay, you can't post pictures of you like at dinner with like your girlfriends. I'm like, why not? And it's just like that professionalism. But at the same time, I'm like, you can be professional, but also just like, take cute pictures with your girlfriends or just like, I don't know, just like on vacation. And I've been told that I can't post pictures of me in a bathing suit or stuff like that because it's unprofessional. And I don't know. I've never really understood that, but I think it's predicated on like where the world was before. Yeah.
And then now, like my favorite thing about running a business is I don't follow any of those rules. It doesn't matter. Like if it's a personal decision, it's because I made the personal decision based on what I think. And not to mention like I do have those thoughts sometimes like, why am I putting this out? Nobody gives a shit.
Yeah.
But I have to like overcome that and then put it out and then see what happens because you have to give yourself a shot. But I was writing an email not too long ago and I forget who it was, but I was writing the email and I said like responded like oh dope, let's do like blah blah blah, like, and it was like a new client or something like that. And somebody was like, oh, I don't know if you want to, like, are they the dope kind of person? Like, because you're thinking about how they respond, which I have had those thoughts in the past too. Yeah. But when I have those thoughts, I'm like, but I'm speaking how I speak no matter what. Because I used to go speak in front of however many people and be like, try to articulate and speak really smartly and stuff. And then, but it didn't feel like fully like me. Yeah. Like that's an element of what I do, but like, I don't like questioning whatever comes out. I like just to be a professional in 2023. You can do whatever you want as long as it's authentic to you. Exactly. And you feel good about it
and genuine.
That's it.
Yeah.
And people are going to judge you and you can say, well, thank you so much for saying that. And I'm actually still going to do whatever I want to do. I appreciate your opinion, but I'm not going to follow those guidelines.
Yeah, I love that actually. And I think 2023 is a new year and it's like, I'm going to post what I want. I'm going to be myself. And if someone wants to unfollow me or not think of me in a certain way because of that, then it's not my fault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and they're not my people.
Yeah. Goodbye.
Yeah.
See ya.
Absolutely. Make room for all the other people that are going to
Yeah.
follow and be impacted by what a beautiful journey you've had thus far. So excited to see everything that's ahead, and it's okay not to know exactly what that is. Yes, thank you so much for coming on today.
No, thank you so much. I felt like I've hit so many like points where I feel enlightened right now because of you. So thank you.
My pleasure. So let everybody let them know where they can find you.
At J Munoz /Z on Instagram, and that's about it.
All right. What's the J stand for? What's your middle name?
Justine. Jennifer Justine Munoz.
Look at that. Now we all know. You're welcome.
They call me Jen.
All right. That's the Rodriguez Project today. Thank you, Jen, so much for coming on and diving deep with me.
Thank you.
And we'll see you all next week. Make sure you like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and rate this podcast. That is how we grow. We'll see you next week.